So, Dr. Douglas Terrier, congratulations on your honorary doctorate from the University of Warwick. You must be very proud.
I am very honored, actually. I'm quite humbled and honored. And we've had a partnership for over 5 years with Warwick Business School, and it's been extremely helpful to me personally as we try to transform the organization. So I'm just very happy to be here.
So, you're NASA's principal advisor on technology and programs. Can you tell us about some of the most exciting current projects at the moment?
Yeah, so it's actually one of, if not the most exciting time in space exploration. We've got several big, large-scale human spaceflight projects in the works. Of course, we have the International Space Station that's been operating for 16 years continuously, crewed. We're building a new generation with ESA as a partner of human spacecraft that'll take us back to the moon and onto Mars.
Wow.
And of course, maybe one of the most exciting things is we've seen the development of a commercial infrastructure in low Earth orbit. We've seen cargo transportation come online in the last couple of years. It's been very successful for us, and we're extending that to human transportation to the International Space Station using companies like Boeing and SpaceX and so on to provide that as almost a commodity service, which is quite a new field in space exploration. And then, of course, when we talk about the further out, then the humans can travel. We have our robotic precursors, and we're building a new class of extremely intelligent, autonomous avatars that'll go back to Mars, the moons of Europa, Enceladus, the moon of Saturn, to look for very specific indications of life that we've found with our current spacecraft. And we're looking to confirm those, where we've seen organics in compounds in the soil, in the atmosphere of geysers and so on coming out from under the surface, the solid surface. As you know, Europa and Enceladus are icy planets, basically, but we've seen basically steam coming out from the surface. We've been able to fly spacecraft through that and detect organic molecules. So there's really some very tangible hints of life, and we're excited about that. And finally, looking even further out into the extremes, we have a new class of space observatories, the James Webb, W1st, that'll come online. James Webb will launch next year. Very productive partnership with the European Space Agency. It'll launch from South America on a Ariane rocket, which just kind of indicates the degree to which our partnership has grown and how interdependent we are internationally. So it's just an amazing time.
Incredible, and such a vast array of projects.
Yeah.
And it seems to me the realms of the likes of me going into space and the idea of finding intelligent life out there, it's not science fiction at all, is it? It's very much fact.
It's very much fact. I think we are on, and I say this with a great degree of consideration. I think we are at a point in history where we've been for 60 years now, NASA has been trying to answer these basic human questions of how did the universe originate? How did we get here? And are we alone? And the exciting thing is that we are literally at a point for the first time in human history where we may have the knowledge and technology to begin to answer these questions. It wouldn't surprise me if my children and grandchildren, who are youngsters today, will have the opportunity to be around when we have confirmation of life elsewhere in the universe. I think we're that close.
It's very exciting.
Yeah.
So you studied engineering. How do you think that shaped your life and career?
I think engineering is one of those disciplines, and I'm sure this discipline way of thinking exists in many sciences, in the STEM disciplines in general. But one of the things that I think is very helpful in formulating all aspects of your life is this, if you will, the philosophy of systems engineering, where you start with a basic requirement, a well-stated, well-understood requirement of what you're trying to accomplish, and try to work backward to decompose that down and into, well, what needs to happen at the second tier to accomplish that? Then what are the building blocks that I need to develop, whether those are technologies or whatever, to enable those accomplishments, right? And so by structuring, I think, all decisions in science and engineering, but probably in life, structure them in that way, where then you have a template from which you can examine individual actions to see if, and you know with certainty whether they're on the path to the big objective that you have. I think it's a pretty good philosophy to take into every aspect of life.
Yeah, so everything from space exploration to how to live your daily life.
Exactly, right, exactly. I think when people plan your financial, life, you've always told, you need to start with what do you think that end goal is? How would you like to retire? How would you like to live in your retirement? And make your decisions from what are the building blocks to get there. So we tend to approach things in general as if each decision is an isolated event, and you make the best decision with the best information at hand. But when you look at it in this larger context, you can see whether in fact that's on the path to where you're trying to go. I think a loose analogy would be if I'm trying to get from here to London, there are infinite paths I could take. But if I map out, that destination, then at every crossroads, every roundabout, I know exactly what the right turn is to take.
And with that in mind, do you have a brief word of advice for today's graduates?
Yeah, I think I would suggest that the biggest piece of advice I could give to anyone in pursuing any goal. I was born in Jamaica. Actually, I was born in a rural part of Jamaica. I was fairly austere environment with not a lot of inspiration around. Fortunately, we had an incredible teacher who introduced us to the Apollo missions. Read from the daily newspaper, the Daily Gleaner. Read the transcripts of the telemetry from the spacecraft to Houston, and that transported us from that very limited world into our imagination, a boundless reality, right? Which has brought me to where I am today. I think the advice I would give anyone is find your Apollo, whatever that is, whatever that inspirational, again, big goal that will drive your life, and just pursue it relentlessly. That's my advice.
Wow, very powerful advice. And we've been talking before this about a project at Warwick to engineer and launch satellites into space, the WooSat project. What do you make of it?
Yeah, I had a chance, of course, to meet Julie and the project directors, and I'm just terribly impressed. It is really an example of what I think we should all be striving for, particularly in undergraduate and graduate education. One of the challenges that we have is that we see students that are, because there is so much new information, so many information technology, computer systems, so on. We see a lot of students that are well versed deeply in one discipline. And back to the comment I made about systems engineering, it turns out understanding how multidisciplinary projects work, how you make those trade-offs between various disciplines can only be done really when you're pursuing an integrated and trying to actually build an integrated, in this case, often flight qualified systems that will go to space. So I just think it's a marvelous approach to teaching, where not only will students understand the disciplines, but they will first have the opportunity to do some hands-on work, it's terribly important, but understand the broader context of what we discussed about really how do you get those decisions that lead you to success. So I'm very impressed with the amount of work that's been accomplished and the real products that are produced out of what is fairly on a fairly austere budget. Remarkable work. So I wish you the very best, and it's the kind of project I would point to as an example of exactly how we should be training students.
Dr. Terrier, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.